St. Louis sports fans, go deeper with STL Sports Central Insiders. Get exclusive access to Bernie, Randy, Claves, Jamal Mayers, and more. Plus, your chance to watch a Blues game in the alumni box with Jamal himself. Monthly giveaways, Bernie's columns all week, and support for local sports media. Join now at stlsportscentral.com.
There's a movie out right now called The Materialists, and Dakota Johnson plays a matchmaker. She's disgruntled with one of her clients, a mid-30s woman who's trying to build the perfect man. She says, can he be 6'5", blonde hair, in finance, Christian? And Dakota Johnson's character says, you cannot customize. This is not a simulation. If I could build you the perfect man, I could. But this is not a car. This is not a house. People are people. And when it comes to the Cardinals catching situation, Ethan Hannaford, I feel very similarly. You have the bat of Ivan Herrera. You have the game calling and defense of Pedro Pajes, the utility man style and the clubhouse chemistry of Joel Pozo, and the athleticism of Jimmy Crooks with some pop in there. That four-person combination would be a heck of a machine behind the plate. However, people are people. And this is Card Central 365, Ethan Hannaford, Luke Slabaugh. Ethan, how would you handle and manage the St. Louis Cardinals catching depth?
That intro gets at least a 15 out of 10, at least. So I don't know how exactly you would put that in number of gold medals, but that was worth at least 1.5 gold medals. So well done, my friend. Good to see you. The Cardinals catching depth, I think, as far as when you look at what the Cardinals have going on, what this offseason is gearing up to look like, is one of the most interesting yet lesser talked about things, because there is, as you mentioned, there is a lot of different talent there. There is a lot of different intriguing pieces. That's not even to consider the lower levels of the minor leagues, where you have some really highly regarded prospects as well that are starting to work their way up. But it is a very interesting setup right now. And same, Richard, honestly, same. It's a very interesting setup, I guess is the best word to use, when you look at what the Cardinals have in trying to navigate how to go about what that position should look like next year. And it's even more interesting when you throw in that the guy that was by far the best offensively last year, Ivan Herrera, kind of started to move away from that position. We saw him there early in the year, and then he had I believe it was a bone bruise on the knee, and then he had a hamstring issue. So they just said, we're not going to pull him, or we're not going to have him be catching anymore. We are going to pull him from that right now because his bat's too important. We want him to be able to still play every day, and we don't want to risk that by having him catch. So Ivan Herrera becomes your full-time DH, besides playing in the outfield like 3-4 times last year. And the bat, I mean, we've seen the bat now for pretty much a full year outside of those couple of injured list stints, and it looked pretty dang good. So you know what you got in the bat, but now they're putting him back in the catcher spot, which I think surprised a lot of people, especially considering, one, how well Pedro Pajes looked defensively there. Two, Jimmy Crooks started to kind of, I wouldn't say bang at the door of the major league level, but he did enter the door. It wasn't necessarily barn burning. It wasn't crazy impressive, but it was also very little time. But you have to imagine that he is either going to be playing here or somewhere else at the major league level. I don't think that they're probably going to move him down, especially when you consider where Leo Bernal, how he was hitting in spring training, in Double-A last year. You have to imagine that he is probably going to move up to Triple-A. I'm all over the place here, but it kind of, I think, accurately reflects where the Cardinals catching situation is right now, because I think there's a lot of different ways in which you can navigate it that would make sense. But Ivan Herrera moving back to the catching position and then basically saying, we're going to give him a go at it this year, that's going to be his position, that kind of halts up everything else. What do you do with Pedro Pajes? What do you do with Jimmy Crooks? What do you do with Joel Pozo? It's a very interesting situation, and there's a lot to dissect in it. But I don't know. I feel like it all starts with them saying, Ivan Herrera, you're going to be the guy in large part behind the plate this year, and you're going to get a go at it.
That rests on Ivan Herrera being able to do the job. He was horrendous at throwing out base runners and has been in his brief major league stint. Turns 26 in June. This goes back to the comment from Chaim Bloom's introductory press conference as president of baseball operations saying, we're not going to concede anything. You say you're a catcher, we're going to give you some reps at catcher. For a guy who hits 19 home runs in only 107 games, to have any semblance of value behind the plate or experience behind the plate, you have to see that through.
Yeah.
Now, Katie Wu reported before she departed and went to LA that Herrera would not be the full-time catcher. However, he's expected to work at backstop after his elbow surgery recovery in the offseason, come back and play part-time at backstop. And that's huge. If he factors his way into the catching conversation, his value exceeds tremendously just having that asset value behind the plate. What also this means is that you get a little bit more out of Pedro Pajes. He's a glove first catcher, and he's a 1.4 WAR player. He's a little bit above league average. A lot of that is because of his defense. For a guy who hit 11 home runs last year and is going to be 27 for most of the season, he's very valuable as a backup catcher. Those two sharing reps behind the plate seems like the most likely scenario for 2026. And that lends itself to the question, what do you do with Joel Pozo? He turns 29 in June. He's got minor league options. Jimmy Crooks has minor league options, and you could quickly write it off and say, hey, we'll send him back to Memphis so he can cut down on the strikeouts, have him and Leo Bernal share time there. And I can just tell you what the headlines are going to be in February. Wow, this Ivan Herrera, he's really gotten better behind the plate. His work ethic is really impressing us. His throwing arm is better than it's ever been. He's in the best shape of his life. That's going to be Ollie Marmol. It's going to be Chaim Bloom. It's going to be everyone commenting on that. Any way to get just an extra modicum of value out of him. What say you about the catching situation come spring training?
Great question. Here's what I am curious of. And I think that it's probably pretty clear that the 1 and 2 is going to be Pajes and Herrera, not in that order. It's gonna be Herrera Pajes. What you do with Jimmy Crooks is going to be really interesting. You could send him back down to AAA, but how much does that impact the development of Leo Bernal, who is a guy that, if you were not kind of in a logjam as far as your level of talent options at the catcher position, Bernal would probably be starting there 5 days a week, would he not? I mean, there's probably a pretty good chance that he's starting there just as much as they want him to. So now you have to split it between two of your top prospects. You could argue to a certain extent that you are limiting what you can get out of Bernal at AAA this year if he does indeed get promoted, as I think a lot of people expect with him moving onto the 40-man roster. So it's an interesting situation there. Rather than spring training, what I am more intrigued about is, all that we had heard about, all that we had talked about this offseason regarding Ivan Herrera. He gets the cleanup surgery in his elbow. Is it going to help? What if it doesn't help? Then what? Hopefully it does. Hopefully it does, and he is able to throw base runners out more effectively. But what if it doesn't, and we're still dealing with a similar issue? Then what is next? How do you navigate the catching position? Are they willing to stick it out and be consistent with him in allowing for those opportunities? But if they just don't see it getting any better, and they don't think it's something that is going to continue improving, do you continue to let him work out of that position, or do you move back to what you did last year and all of a sudden it opens up time for Jimmy Crooks to get some time at the major league level? It's a very it's so interesting to see how exactly they're going to navigate it. And there is not one clear, definitive option. But if this ends up being a situation where Ivan Herrera's arm, despite what we have heard, does not improve, then where do you go from there? That's what I am more intrigued about rather than what does it look like in spring training. Because the only thing that I could see from now to spring training changing is if they clear out an option or two. We know that they are in the pitching market. We know that they are trying to bring in talent, young talent that has years of eligibility, right, on that entry level contract. Would they be willing to move any of these young catchers in order to sweeten the return when attaching it to whoever? Would they be willing to do that? Jimmy Crooks seems like a guy for me right now that is stuck in the in-between. You have your guys at the major league level that you feel pretty good about right now. You have your two guys at the minor league level in which you feel pretty good about right now. Bernal's going to be in AAA, I would assume, this upcoming year. What do you do with Jimmy Crooks? I'm going to be really curious to see if his name is getting shopped around. I don't know what the value of it would be, but this is a guy that in the minor leagues has shown power ability, extra base guy. He has a good arm, has a much stronger arm than I would argue both of the catchers at the major league level for the Cardinals right now. Would the Cardinals be willing to send him to try and clear out some of that logjam that you have in your prospect system right now? I would be intrigued to see it. So when it comes to spring training, that would be my biggest question: is who is gone? Are they willing to depart from one of their prospects? At some point, they're going to have to. You can only pick one of them to be your guy. It's just a matter of how long are they going to really wait to figure out who is going to be their guy.
The wait may be as long as this coming week and the winter meetings. That's something that I want to get to in a second. But really good points there about Jimmy Crooks, who profiles as a glove-first guy with a little bit more pop, and that commands value in and of itself on the trade market, even if his prospect profile and value just in the limited stint he had last year wasn't mind-blowing. Did have that home run, though. But first, I want to give a shout-out to the sponsor of this show, and that is DraftKings.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's read this verbatim. Missouri. Your moment's finally here because DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is now live in the state. Please play responsibly. You can use same-game parlays, money lines, props, and more, all from your phone, all safe and secure and easy to use. Missouri fans know game day. You got that bowl game coming up. You want an Independence Bowl down in Shreveport, probably. Tailgates, noise, passion. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bring that same energy to every snap, every touchdown, every win. And right now, new Missouri customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets instantly. No waiting, no nonsense. It's free money. I'm giving you free money right now. Just pure action. Powered by America's top-rated sportsbook app. This is DraftKings. This is the sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. One single use odds boost per customer. Market boosted to plus 100 odds. Max bet $50. Expires at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time, December 7th. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
It's free real estate, to quote the Bill and Ted sketch. All right. Tim and Eric sketch. Winter meetings are coming up. And I couldn't help but shake the feeling that Wilson Contreras, speaking of another catcher on the Cardinals roster who no longer catches, but was signed to be the heir to Yadier Molina. Look how that worked out. He's the key to all of this. He's the linchpin. If this week Chaim Bloom can pull off a trade and convince Wilson Contreras to waive his no-trade clause, that opens up some reps at first base. Yes, Alec Burleson will get some of those. However, if Ivan Herrera is not expected to be a full-time catcher, that may lend itself to him getting reps over there at first base. Jimmy Crooks runs pretty well. He's athletic. He could be a stopgap. And we saw Joel Pozo do the same thing, although it seems more than likely they will try to stash Pozo at Memphis. If Wilson Contreras is not on the roster come spring training or come opening day, you have a little bit more wiggle room to work with. The thing that is important for the Cardinals in the midst of a rebuild is to not feel burdened and have someone be a full-time DH. Not Herrera, not Burleson, not anyone. Not an Arenado type. You got to be able to rotate players around there. If for some reason Brendan Donovan's a little sluggish and he's hurting and he's on the roster in 2026, you need to be able to rotate who's hitting in that DH spot, who's filling out that part of the lineup card. And so with the winter meetings coming up, why not package, you had mentioned packaging a catching prospect with Wilson Contreras, maybe sweeten the pot a little bit. But how significant is this coming week in terms of just figuring out the catching situation for 2026?
It is not everything, but it is most certainly important. And you look back on past winter meetings prior to last year, they had been relatively quiet because there was a lot of holding out. There was a lot of, we're going to wait till the last moment to see if we can possibly get the best deal. That is not how it was last year. There was so much movement at the winter meetings last year, and the Cardinals are expected to be pretty active in the winter meetings this upcoming week. Now, will the Cardinals be able to find a suitor for Wilson Contreras? I would have to imagine for $17.5 million over 2 years, when you look at what Contreras has done offensively, that there's going to be some options out there. There's going to be some suitors out there. Now, I think it might also depend on if he is willing to catch as well. How many teams are out there have a lot of strong interest for first baseman or DH? I mean, that is a position, as you just mentioned a moment ago, that you can fill pretty well. Now, what is enticing about it is it's going to be a cheaper option than Pete Alonso, but you're also not getting as much power attached with it. So it's going to be interesting to see if Chaim Bloom is able to find. It's going to be interesting to see what the market is for Wilson Contreras, because there's pros and cons to it. And for the Cardinals, as you mentioned, the pro is that one, you get something, you get some sort of return for someone that over the next couple of years is not going to really do much for you in the sense of on the field. Yes, he's a great player, but is adding a couple more wins in 2026, 27 going to really do much for you? No, it's not. If the most impactful thing that Wilson Contreras will do for this team, if he stays the next couple of years, is be that veteran presence that these young guys on this team that have not been at the major league level for more than a year, more than 2-3 years, they can look to him and they can see that presence that has been in the big moments before, that has done this for years. That's going to be the biggest con if they move on, if they do trade away Wilson Contreras. But if it means being able to further clear out this logjam in which the Cardinals have, because yes, they still have a massive logjam. The only piece that they have traded is a spot where they didn't have logjam, and that was starting pitching. So they still have a massive logjam. And trading away Contreras would help clear that up a little bit. As you mentioned, Alec Burleson can play the outfield. He can also play first base. And while he would get a lot of time at first base, you would need someone else to fill in there as well. It kind of makes sense for Ivan Herrera, as almost eye-rolling as it is to talk about, because you have so many catchers, having one of them play first base as well. As eye-rolling as that is, it does make sense. So this is a very important week. This is a very important week in seeing what the market looks like for him, seeing how many teams are, hey, we're more so in the Pete Alonso market, we're more so in this guy's market before Contreras, and we're going to let that set. I don't think Wilson Contreras gets traded at the winter meetings, because I think there's probably going to be teams out there that are in on bigger guys and would be more so willing to settle for Wilson Contreras than anything. but we'll have to wait and see. That is, by no means does that mean that Wilson Contreras could not get traded at the winter meetings this week. I would just more so say that there are other names on the Cardinals that I expect have a higher likelihood to be traded before Wilson Contreras.
Your point brings me back to my Dakota Johnson analogy at the start of the show, where, we can't customize and give you the perfect option. All I can do is give you a man that you can tolerate for the next 50 years, who's just okay. And that's the Wilson Contreras sweepstakes. You didn't get Kyle Schwarber. You didn't get Pete Alonso. You didn't get Christian Walker. Here we are. And Richard Crosong agrees with you in terms of the value proposition here. Says, why don't you package Pedro Paez with Brendan Donovan if you can get something of value from the Mariners, because they do need someone to spell Cal Raleigh when he's DHing. And so Brendan Donovan can fit anywhere. They can plug him anywhere on the diamond. Seems like a pretty good fit. And he adds to that. Jimmy Crooks then gets a shot to get meaningful reps with Ivan Herrera, develop. You have Pozo there as insurance, a third catcher type, and definitely a bench guy and a fan favorite. Steve Wright says, I don't know how long you're going to hold on to Pedro Paez once he's arbitration eligible, and I would agree with that. There is a glut of catching in the system, and it's good. Like, it's a good problem to have. Even if you're a rebuilding team, you had mentioned holding on to your veteran and star players. What good does an extra couple wins do? And giving Jimmy Crooks meaningful reps, giving Nolan Gorman meaningful reps on the infield, Thomas JC, Ivan Herrera. This is an important year for those young players. We just are scratching the surface on Leo Bernal. He turns 22 in February. He hit 13 home runs at Springfield last year in Double-A. Switch hitter, well-rounded, work ethic off the charts, so much so that they put him on the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. And Reinel Rodriguez is 18 years old, 13 home runs at Low A Palm Beach, slugged .500. Got in a few games in with Peoria, should be in High A for all of next year and maybe some Double-A. Prospects are lottery tickets, and it seems like the Cardinals have enough of those at backstop. But the lottery tickets, again, if prospects worked out every time, the Cardinals would still have Shelby Miller, Anthony Reyes, and Nick Plummer, and would have just won a World Series. That's really just, that's how it is. Final thoughts, Ethan Hannaford, as we wrap up our discussion on the Cardinals catching depth.
Yeah, if you haven't gone and watched Bernie Miklas's video that he put out, I believe, last week on Reinel Rodriguez and how good he is, then go and do so, because he does an excellent breakdown of just how legitimate his numbers were as an 18-year-old and what rare company he fits in as well, based off of what he did offensively last year in rookie ball in Single A. So this is a guy that has a lot of talent. It's going to take a little bit of time to get him here. He is still several he's going to be several years away, probably, I would imagine. Maybe some would disagree. That's okay. But he's someone to be excited about. I think Leo Bernal has shown great potential as well in his early years in the system. It's going to be really interesting to see how exactly they go about this. But what would surprise me if the Cardinals don't utilize some of this catching talent that they have in organization, whether at the major league level or not, and they don't try to use some of that as leverage in trying to make a deal happen for some of these pieces. Pedro Paez as a backup option to Seattle would be kind of interesting. I don't know how much he is threading or how much he is necessarily moving that needle per se. Maybe he does. Maybe he does more than I think. But I think Jimmy Crooks is going to carry more value. But also maybe that's reason to keep him. So it's all really going to depend on what Chaim Bloom is going to be able to figure out the market, how the market views these guys, and what different attachments would be able to get you in return. We saw a little bit of a different example, but it's the same idea, right? And that the Cardinals are not getting back the prospects in which they got with Sonny Gray if they don't attach that $20 million. So is the difference between the Cardinals getting a top 5 prospect in a system and a top 15 prospect in a system, them being willing to attach Jimmy Crooks instead of Pedro Paez? I don't know. But these are the kinds of things that Chaim Bloom has to navigate and figure out and decide, is it worth moving on from any of the catching talent that they have? It's going to be really interesting to find out how exactly he navigates it. But yes, we always have, no matter what happens this offseason, no matter what happens next year, we always have what Adam says right here, 2029 is going to be freaking awesome when Reinald Rodriguez is the cleanup hitter for the St. Louis Cardinals and behind the plate.
And that's why there's really not much of a sense of urgency when it comes to the Cardinals catching situation, at least at the lower level of the minors.
Yeah.
It's best to let these things bake. Yadier Molina was a great example. Like, it took him, many years to get adjusted and be in Mike Matheny's shadow before really breaking out. And it took years for the bat to develop too. So this is just, they're scratching the surface on this. One final footnote, because this is the first time that you and I have hosted in probably a month together. Is there any more evidence we need that Chaim Bloom watches our show than the Sonny Gray trade? Because we mentioned Brandon Clark by name and broke it down. And we were like, yes, go get this left-handed pitcher. We're making moves.
Oh, St. Louis media, watch out, because we're coming. We're here. Heads up.
Thanks for joining the Spin Zone. This was Card Central 365 on Sunday, December the 7th. So much spin. I need Bill O'Reilly to slow me down. It has been a wonderful time talking to you all. Go enjoy some football. We'll be back tomorrow, as is the case. He's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. This show was presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Have a happy Sunday.